what we do is actually provide exceptional offshore staffing solutions for the RTO industry. But in stealing a few minutes with you today, I actually wanted to go beyond what we do to describe more about how we actually do it. And the secret of that is actually on the back of our shirt. I've got a bit of a picture of it up there saying, I re-engineer workforces. And we routinely get asked what that actually means. And so I thought, rather than boring you with the theory, I'd share with you a bit of a story of how we helped an RTO last year. Now, this year I was involved in traineeships and apprenticeships and delivering vocationally in workplaces. So trainers were buzzing around in cars. Now, that might look like your RTO, or perhaps your RTO is Cricos campus-based and it's very different. But hopefully, the story can share some parallels that you might be able to see in your RTO. So, what we did with this RTO is we went by each department and looking at how were tasks arranged and skills and proficiencies across those roles arranged and how could it be looked at differently. They had some challenges they were looking to conquer. So this RTO had 8 full-time trainers, and those trainers were based, living in their cars, essentially, buzzing around to different workplaces. And so subsequently they had some real constraints on their availability. So they could only do up to 3 sessions per day, which meant they had some caps on total student numbers. They were only able to take about 70 students each, because any more than 70 students started to blow out the timeline in between when they were seeing their students and therefore extending the duration of the qualification and delaying cash flow milestones because they're being paid on competency achievement. Through the process of workforce re-engineering, we're able to help this RTO develop a new model, and that involved having 2 inside trainers, those trainers based inside the office, and they were responsible for running 5 workshops online via video conference per day each. They had 10 workshops running every day that the apprentices and trainees could be booked into. Then they had 2 field-based assessors. So these field-based assessors were still based in the cars, buzzing around, but they're only going to workplaces when the trainee or apprentice had achieved a milestone online and achieved that work being undertaken via the learning management system. Then they had 2 student support officers who were involved in engaging the students, monitoring progress through the learning management system. Had they logged on recently, encouraging them. They were also charged with booking the students in for the online workshops, booking the students in for the observation assessments with the field-based assessors. And then finally they had a part-time marker. So 1 person doing all the marking across the student load. So the effect of this change was they were able to increase unit throughput quite significantly in the order of 15%, which had some significant revenue bearings to the organisation. They had a really agile workforce. Having 2 people in each of those key roles meant if there was any absence, leave, sickness, they had some coverage there. The staff were operating in their passion zones. Having these varying types of trainer roles allowed people to self-select or be guided by their management team into what might be a better fit for them. Right through to even the marker. The marker was loving their life because they got work completely flexible hours. They were doing this in and around pickups, drop-offs, at night whenever they needed to. Reduction of 6 company cars. So we took from 8 people buzzing around in cars down to 2. And so that had a real practical dollar saving of about $90,000. And then working with us, they were able to offshore 2 of those student support roles, and that had an effect of about $112,000 in savings. Coursing through the balance of the organisation, the sales team, similar story, had 5 full-time BDMs driving around in cars, prosecuting new business, existing, and doing all manner of entry into the CRM. Post-engineering their workforce, they actually arrived at a model where they only had 1 BDM, and they weren't prospecting, they were just showing up to do appointments. And those appointments were set by the sales coordinator, which was a role that we moved inside, so it could be done in an office. And that person owned the BDM's diary and took charge of doing any post-meeting follow-through and also all the entry into the CRM, which the BDM hated anyway. So for them, it allowed them to thrive in just doing what they do best, which is connecting with people. We then brought another role inside and we called it an account manager, and that was just to look after all of their existing clients, checking in to make sure that they were happy with the way the traineeship or apprenticeship was progressing, seeing if they had any new staff start that needed to be enrolled in their apprenticeship. And then 1 lead generator who was responsible for warm outreach, cold outreach, picking up referrals from the account manager and getting them booked into the BDM's diary. Again, some pretty significant effects of these changes. They had a doubling in new business appointments. because of that focus on new business through the lead generator and working with the sales coordinator. Staff operating in their passion zones, no longer having to enter data into the CRM by the BDM. They hated it, now they didn't need to do it. Reduction in one full-time equivalent headcount and some significant savings across both less cars that the company needed, so that saved about 60,000. And then because the sales coordinator, the account manager and the lead generator were all moved to inside roles, we were able to help them offshore those for saving just over $250,000. The marketing department had a similar thing. They were predominantly interested in the vanity of posting short videos and photos of training activities. And so what we did with the course of re-engineering was actually look to put some really stringent KPIs over what they were looking to achieve. So instead of just 2 generic general marketing assistants, they implemented 1 performance marketer, 1 content lead, 1 multimedia designer, and 1 marketing assistant. And the effect of these roles is that whilst the team doubled, we were actually able to offshore those 4 roles and ended up saving them $30,000 in the marketing department labour budget. But they had a real strong effect on producing outcomes and results. So rather than the vanity of just posting some photos and videos and looking for some social engagement, this team being more performance and KPI focused started to generate from second month 10 appointments and 15 direct student inquiries, which had a big bearing on the student acquisition efforts of the business. Operations department was really interesting. They had churned through a whole variety of staff in their admin. In the preceding 2 years before we started working with them, they had not 1 staff member exceed 6 months in tenure. And that was causing all manner of complications because that attrition of institutional knowledge meant student files were a mess. Student management system was punctuated with categorised students that weren't current anymore, they actually should have been cancelled, had not been. So it was a real mess. And so what we decided through going through this re-engineering process was they actually needed to employ a really senior office manager. But they wanted to make sure that this office manager could not just come in and clean up the mess. They wanted to make sure they would really retain that office manager. So we agreed they were going to pay that office manager more than double what they'd ever paid an admin staff member before. But they did that and went on to subsequently wrap 2 admin staff around that office manager. And because of that effect, they now had that same 3-person headcount. But we're able to do that and still save money with having 2 of those assistants being offshored. And so within 3 months, the RTO, off the back of that really experienced senior person coming into being the office manager, were able to really turn the organisation around. Finally, in the finance team, it wasn't on the cards for us to overhaul this department. They had 1 bookkeeper who was just smashed and overwhelmed with a huge volume of work. She actually had a medical emergency while we're going through the implementation of some of these changes. And that really shone a spotlight on how exposed they were, having all of these critical functions of the RTO coursing through 1 person. And so after the medical emergency, she actually came back and suggested she actually wanted to drop down to 2 days per week. So what we did post in implementing here was actually introduce 2 offshore full-time accountants, and then we segregated their responsibilities, with one of them picking up accounts payable and payroll, the other one picking up accounts receivable, FASs, and the management reports. Under the bookkeeper, a lot of stress fractures had emerged. Payroll had been late a couple of times, accounts receivables blowing out more than 60, 90 days recurring. So with both of these new accountants in place, they now had 3 headcounts in the finance team. So it added a huge amount of redundancy in the RTO. The incumbent bookkeeper was far happier because they were obviously far less stressed and overwhelmed because they had 2 extra sets of hands to help them. And the new accountants quickly got accounts receivable underhand, bringing in cash flow, and payroll wasn't late anymore. So the impact of this workforce re-engineering we're able to help this RTO was they were able to save over $800,000 in direct expenses. They allowed their staff, their onshore staff, to really operate in their strength and passion zones, having really niche and bespoke roles created for them to do. The training team was able to bring in more revenue and deliver on a better student experience. The sales team were producing more predictable results through a really systemised sales process. The marketing team were delivering appointments and students rather than the vanity of just posting a few photos. And the operations team were really stabilised and providing a really solid foundation to be audit ready for that RTO. And then finally, the finance team had that redundancy built to their team, and they're really reliably then delivering on the accountabilities of this team. So at PeoplePartners, re-engineering workforce is a big part of what we do. Our overarching mission is to partner with leaders to scale profitable and efficient organisations. If there was some parallels in the story that might aid your RTO, we'd love to chat. We also obviously help even on the extreme end. If you felt, wow, that's a massive overhaul, that's a huge change management overwhelm, we help RTOs right through to those that maybe just want to start with one staff member involved in student support, or one in instructional design, or one in accounts payable. We'd love to have a chat. We're in the foyer. We won't hold you from lunch anymore. So I hope you enjoy lunch and look forward to connecting over the next couple of days. Thanks so much.